You are already on the path of awakening. It's time to transition from a life of struggle to a life of play. It's time to discover your autonomy, agency, sovereignty, and potency. Welcome to Reveal the Game of Life. Hey everyone, welcome back to Reveal the Game of Life. This is Molly Mandelberg, one of your hosts. I'm here with your other host,
Chris Tomaso.
Today we're talking about capacities, superpowers, diagnoses that may be your alter ability, and how learning more about yourself and how you operate and function best is the path to having what you want. Yeah. So what's that experience been like for you this week, Chris?
I'm glad you asked. Well, I want to back up and say, like, I'm very much obsessed with like typing myself. So putting myself in a typing system. So I've been getting into like astrology more in the last like 3 months. I was always into like Myers-Briggs, like I'm an INFP, if anybody cares. Human design is another one that I discovered last year, and gene keys as well. So there's lots of ways to learn about yourself. And the thing is it's could be a trap. It can be giving you clarity about yourself, but it's also a trap in that it creates you into a box potentially. So I remember when I discovered, I was like, oh, am I actually an introvert? Because I used to like be very extroverted and like had a lot of friends, do a lot of socializing. But then I was like, maybe I'm an introvert. And that was cool because it gave me permission to do what I was doing, which was spending a lot of time alone, spending a lot of time thinking by myself. But then the challenge with that was that, well, I'm an introvert, so now I can't go do XYZ. I shouldn't go pursue XYZ career because I don't have enough energy for it because I'm an introvert. So a box can be freeing, but eventually it becomes limiting. So I just want to like set that stage. And so what's happened most recently is that I started to suspect through conversations with others that I had ADHD, and including my sister, who studies the brain and has a PhD and experienced this, and she was able to like break down her experience with it as well. And I for a long time I've been trying to accept myself as I am, and I've been fortunate enough to co-create a career that really values my way of being, which is very much what I call galaxy braining, and then have difficulty sitting down and focusing and getting a lot of work done in a long period of time. So I'm very lucky in that my job doesn't count hours, for example, and because if they did, like they would see that I put a lot of like burst into like a short amount of time. There's all these things that have happened over time, these little pieces that have built to make me living and being as myself and acting in the world better, like more. I'm able to work with myself rather than against myself. And a lot of productivity systems or systems about changing your life imply that you're one type of person. And then I would beat myself up for not being able to do that. Like, oh, I can't set a 30-day goal and do this thing every single day for 30 days, or I can't do it easily. And I can't do these things that people say is like the key to success. And so for a long time, I was like, well, they're all wrong. I'm going to figure out my own key to success, et cetera. I got into gamification for this reason, because I was like, if I can understand my own motivation, then I will be able to act and be like the people who are successful, right? So all of these ways of seeing yourself can be a judgment. So it was a judgment for me. But the thing with ADHD is it gave me a way to have more compassion for myself, because I was able to sort of reframe all the things that I thought that I was just bad at for no reason and that other people were good at as being a function of the way my brain works. Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, but I think calling it a disorder is not serving people for the long term. But I think that the components of what an ADHD brain does are helpful to know, to become aware of, so that instead of, like, for example, I know that if I'm going to do a chore, I need to listen to a podcast. But if I don't know that I need that, then I might think, maybe I don't need it. Maybe I should just do it without a podcast and then not be able to do the chores. And then I beat myself up over that I can't do it. Why can't I do this like normal people? right? And so it creates that. So yeah, the big aha is being able to have less judgment of myself. And I think that's really the power of these various ways of seeing yourself, like you said, capacities. And I think that to keep this monologue going, I think that in society, more and more, people are recognizing that people with unique capacities are uniquely positioned to solve certain problems. So in the past, our society really rewarded people who could sit and diligently work at something for a long time, like 9 to 5 work days, and then also like specializing over like 30 years. You stay in one job, you do the same thing for 30 years, and then you're done, you retire, right? You get a pension, it's all good. But our society is not like that anymore. The biggest problems we have are nonlinear, multidimensional problems that need certain capacities to be able to do them. Gamification, what I do for consulting, is one of them. It crosses like 7 disciplines. If you don't have the ability to connect dots across different disciplines in the moment, like making decisions, then you can't do it. So it's very hard to do it. It's very hard to get in and be like, okay, there's a one size fits all formula for this, because it's just too chaotic and dynamic of a thing.
Yeah, I think that is such a cool thing about how society is changing. And also, yeah, one of the things I love about Access Consciousness is a lot of the people in there, they call themselves X-Men because they're mutant humans and they have
Yeah,
what society would call disabilities, what I
right.
would call like alter abilities or superhuman capacities. And
Yeah,
the idea of like claiming that sort of identity as an X-Men is recognizing, you know, that diagnosis, whatever it is, Asperger's, ADHD, autism, whatever that different functioning brain is. What if that's like the biggest gift in your life, and learning how to use that and harness the power of it is the game you're playing in this reality.
right.
And what more than a normie uh
Mm-hmm.
brain can do, can your brain do? And
Yeah,
what's fun for your brain to actually engage with? And like there is no shame in using pharmaceuticals when necessary
sure.
to harness the power of your mind to do something it needs to do.
Yeah,
And what is the natural state of your brain wanting? What kind of play, what
right.
kind of exploration? How can you use that to create your life? And how would
Yeah.
that be different than whatever this society is telling you to do with your life?
So what's really interesting about this is that, so if you've listened to our previous episode on depression, you'll know that I was diagnosed with clinical depression at 15. And so that was the first time that I was aware of this fact that my brain is like a series of firing, neurons, and that my neurons might be firing in a different way. My brain chemistry might be different than other people. And then what experientially that is like depression was like, oh, this thing feels like it lasts forever. It feels like I have no joy or desire. I have no energy. I started to, over time, because I didn't like medication at all. I had a really bad experience with medication when I was depressed. So I was 15 or 16. I was prescribed medication. I took it on vacation. I was at Disney World, which is really random. And it made me super manic and then super suicidal. I was lucky that I talked myself out of it, but that was the closest I've ever been to suicide. And so I was like, medication's not for me. No medication is for me, and I'm not going to do it. And the thing with medication is that it implies that you're broken, that you need something ongoing to fix yourself. It's a diagnosis. It's a disorder. You need a doctor to prescribe you. It's like the whole system and framework around it is like, you're not okay as you are. You're broken, right? And so for the longest time, I thought I was broken and that I tried to just live with depression. And so I learned all these other tools. In fact, one might say that the entire spiritual path that I've been on is a process of me trying to bring more ease and joy into my life, because my default state was not ease and joy. And so depression created this quest of self-awareness and of spiritual work and of energy work and learning and cognating, like all of these things about how reality works. And if I can just figure out reality, maybe I can understand myself and maybe I can be happy. And what's interesting is that in the process of researching about ADHD, as it says that anxiety and depression sometimes is a coping mechanism for ADHD. And so it's possible that there was an engine driving this the whole time that no one was aware of. And I was treating a symptom, not the root cause. And one could say that ADHD isn't even the root cause. It's just another symptom of your chemical imbalances in your brain that's probably based on your diet, your stress levels, your this or that, right? So it can all like, and then one can also say the root cause of that is your spiritual path. That's you came to here to have an experience, and here is the default state of you. And now you needing something or perceiving to need something puts you on a spiritual quest. So it's possible that this is one of my big quests that I'm only now realizing this layer of. And if I had learned about this earlier, then I may not have learned everything that I came here or experienced everything I came here to learn about self-forgiveness, about maybe it's okay that I am this way. You know, what I really like about these different spiritual modalities that I brought up, like human design, is it's all about working with who you are and what your energy is. And so in human design terms, I'm what's called a manifesting generator, which is basically like spiritual ADHD, right? It's like does a lot of things, focuses on a lot, has a lot of energy, and then gets over things and wants to move on to something else.
Yeah, I find especially human design of all the different typing systems, it gives a lot of permission for all those aspects of yourself are actually perfectly part of your design. They're not character flaws. They're not wrongnesses of you. They're capacities, and they have functions, and they have information to give you about how to live your life. But I just want to acknowledge the beauty of how you just unpacked the sort of like series of diagnoses and awarenesses in your life, and how that was perfectly what you came to this earth, to this body, to this life to experience. And that the permission inside of that for people is fucking huge. And yeah, I really appreciated witnessing that series of understandings. And to anyone out there who is taking a medication for a diagnosis or for a symptom in their life, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with you. And that to use whatever tools are available to make it through the day is what we have to do. And as you take care of the fundamental you right now, you get to build that capacity or that space in your life to explore what else you want to know, what else you can learn about yourself, what else you can actually be and have and choose and create. And if you don't have baseline, I want to say joy, but really it's like baseline of lack of depression, you can't get to those lessons
of well-being.
Well-being. And so you do whatever the hell you got to do to get through the day and never give up on that understanding of what more am I here for? What greater am I capable of? And what have I been perfectly designed to be, do, have, create, generate, choose right now? Because like, I love how your career has shown you that your brain functioning exactly how it functions is a huge commodity, and that people want that from you. And me too. People want access to my brain, and they'll pay me hundreds of dollars an hour to use my brain. And my brain loves to do it, like loves it, like wants to make stuff and help people figure out how to make stuff and like unpack the pieces of what that looks like. And so like, yay, I found something where my brain gets to do exactly what it wants to do. And people want that from me. And I think the only way that happens is if we keep unpacking, how does my brain want to work? What things does it actually like to do? What have I been perfectly designed for? And what career path or what hobby or passion project is going to fulfill that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious, and thank you for all of that acknowledgement. It's wonderful to live with something for so long and feel like it's a curse, and then be able to transmute it and then give it the gift to others, to say like, you can transmute your own. And I honestly think that you're talking about capacities, like reframing this as capacities or superpowers. Superpowers often feel like curses in the beginning, and they create your quest. Like they create the thing that you become obsessed with understanding. And then that obsession leads you to focus on something that becomes your unique gift. And that's what changes. And then you give that to the world. I mean, that's not what everybody's path is probably, but if you're resonating with this, it's probably your path, something like that.
I was just having a mental image of Spider-Man having goop coming out of his wrist. Like, what do I do with this? Like, there's all this goop. And then he's like, oh, wait, I could swing around on this stuff.
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the myth. And that's, if you're going to tell a story about what you're doing on here, that is a very empowering one. That's the hero's journey, really, is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Or heroine's journey. I was just curious for you, Molly, did you get any diagnoses or like mental health awarenesses or things along your path? I don't think
I
we've ever
had,
talked about this.
yeah, I mean, I was diagnosed with chronic depression when I was younger. And it was sort of deemed situational because there was a lot going on in my life and a lot of trauma that I was going through and experiencing. I later decided that it was more seasonal affect disorder than disorder, but basically
Right.
Molly's body needs sunshine to be happy.
Right. You're the rhythm of your body, right?
Right.
That's
But
also the thing.
and then so I had to figure out how to have a career that allows me to have the sunshine that I need. And
Right.
that looks like for me van life right now. And at some point it'll look like probably living on land and having property and still traveling in the winter if I'm somewhere that's not sunny.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But no, other than that, I mean, I might have ADD. I'm really good at sitting down and getting things done, but I also have, my brain likes to do 1,000 different things at once.
Yeah, you're amazing at getting things done. Like
Yeah.
if you said you had ADD, then I'm like, okay, then everyone has ADD. It's like no way.
But I
who
just
am I
have
to
a
say,
brain
right?
that makes stuff in its own time. I was just talking about this with somebody this weekend. I did a Vipassana meditation, which is not a great place to go if you're in the throes of serious depression, I'll say. If you're not at a like okay baseline, I don't recommend sitting alone in silence, or not necessarily alone, but sitting in silence for 10 days straight. But the Vipassana meditation I did a few years ago, sitting with my own brain for 100 hours of meditation in 10 days, 10 hours a day, no talking for 10 days, that I got to know my brain really, really well. And my brain in its natural state is a builder, it's a maker of things. And
Yeah.
there was something that clicked for me in that of like, oh, if that's just what my brain does, then like I'm going to let it. I'm not going to like stop it. I'm going to allow things to get made. I'm going to have multiple projects going at a time. And I mean, oh my God, this van that I've built was like so much fun for my brain. I have spent, for the first 2.5 years of living in a van, I was still building it and working on it. And I just would be falling asleep every night, like, how's the sink going to work? And like, where could I attach it? And my brain would just be piecing those puzzles together. So that was really powerful for me, just to get a deep snapshot of what's my brain's homeostasis. How does it want to be functioning? What is it really like to think about and look at and do? And how can I make more of my life centered around letting it work the way that it wants to work? And luckily my business is like an absolute playground for that kind of thinking.
Absolutely. And so when it comes to like engineering your business, like, if you listen to our last episode about uncertainty, maybe you don't know like what business works for you. And if you try to figure it out, it probably won't work. You just see what your brain likes to engage in and do more of that. Even if you think you can't just start doing more of it. So I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, I remember talking to a friend and saying, man, I was like talking to them for like 2 or 3 hours, right? I was like, if I could just get paid to do this all day, that would be amazing. But that's not possible. There's no way I could get paid to do this. And right. And even when I started doing gamification consulting, I was doing less of this talking stuff. And then I started doing more and more as I showed that I was really good at it, as it was like valuable for clients. And not only could I talk, but I could also design while I was talking, because it was easy for me to, so I want to go back to the ADHD thing. It's people develop coping mechanisms for whatever their afflictions are, right? And so I found that it was very hard for me to sit down and do like 8 hours of work on something. So I was not good at the like back end designing, but I was really, really good at doing it in front of a client with a client, which is something that's actually really difficult to do. If someone's paying you thousands of dollars to have answers right now on the spot and for you to interact with a tool while you're talking to them, that's like pretty hard for a lot of people to do. For me, that not only wasn't hard, I found it easier than doing it myself. Like I was like, I'll just wait till the client meeting and then I'll just do it with them together. That was naturally causing me to focus, because there was a lot of fear of like, I don't want to disappoint this person. I want them to get value. And so that anxiety channeled into focusing, and then I could shut out the rest of my thoughts. And so I found ways of working with people that worked with my brain that didn't require medication. I will say in this case, the medication was a very powerful experience because I was like, oh, the noise in my brain stopped. I don't have to think about anything right now. I can just be like quiet. This is why meditation never worked for me, because it was just like meditating in a room where people are like screaming, right? Like that's kind of how it sounds. It's not that bad. It's not like unpleasant because I got used to it. I'm like, oh, this is just how brains are. They're just like super noisy and like thinking about a million things at the same time. But yeah, the medication gave me a tool to be able to not have that. And I was like, this is what other people's brains are like. Like it's this quiet, and I can choose to think about this thing, and then I can choose not to think about this other thing.
Mhm.
Wow.
Right.
Like
I've heard that
that's
experience for a
incredible.
lot of people who realize they have ADHD and find medication
Right.
for it. They're like, oh my God, this is what having a different kind of brain is like. It's like
Right.
epiphany of like, oh my goodness, I can hack
Right.
life and function in a different way.
Yeah.
And I like that focus on both, that sometimes having the brain that works differently is a badass thing to have access to. And then
Right.
having the capacity to be able to zero in on a focus.
Right. It's a tool just like anything else. I think the thing that we just want to hammer into people's minds when they listen to this is everything we're talking about is a tool. Not every tool is universally useful. You use the right tool for the job. As you learn more tools, you find better tools to make the process easier, whatever it is you're doing, whether you're living in your day-to-day life or you're using the various spiritual tools we talk about. Like they're all, the more tools you have, the more dynamic and nuanced ways you have to live in your reality. So what's
There's a
the
lot,
takeaway here?
there's a
Like,
lot of
yeah,
permission in here that
yeah,
it's okay to be you, that you're not broken, you're not wrong. Getting help is okay. And I think the taking the diagnosis as a death sentence or as a wrongness of you is optional.
it's
Um,
data, right? It's just a perspective. It's just
yeah.
one way of viewing yourself. And if it helps you give yourself permission, great. If it feels like you put yourself in a box, then, you
Okay.
know, fuck it. Like I have a friend who was diagnosed with bipolar, and he calls it the bipolar experience because he doesn't want to call it a disorder. It's
Mm,
an experience. It's a different way of being in the world.
yeah.
It comes with its pros and cons, right?
Yeah. Totally. And like
So
be willing to explore. I mean, we talk about getting curious a lot on this show, but be willing
yeah,
to explore like what really lights your brain up. What does it want to do? And like now more than ever before in the history of the world, pretty much any cool thing your brain wants to do probably has a function or a capacity or a like place in this world. And we see that more than anything on TikTok, people doing weird, silly, crazy shit and just
right.
showing it off on TikTok, whether it's making art or making music or making people laugh. Like there's a market for it. And it could be that, uh, not that you need to be famous for it, but that it could be a key to a new pathway.
Yeah, and I'll go even further and say that solving the problems of the world, of which there are many, will require nothing less than you doing this.
Mm,
Because
yeah.
if you fit your brain into a role that it doesn't want, then you're not serving the planet. So
Mm,
like you got to take care of yourself, do that. You know, if you're in survival mode, like do what you got to do. I lived with this brain waiting tables for years. And like, I wondered why I couldn't hold a job or why every job bored me
mm.
after a year. Cause I was like, I thought everything there is to think about this industry. There's nothing more for me to learn. I had to find a job that there's basically infinite things to learn. There's no end to the learning
Yeah.
to stay, to want to stay. So if you, yeah, we need you to be lit up in that way. And your brain is an incredible piece of feedback to know what's lighting you up and what, not say problems you're uniquely solving, because again, that's talking about like fixing the planet, right?
Mhm.
But it's like unique puzzles that you get to solve, or unique games you get to play, and
Mm.
that people want you to play. And when you play them, it benefits people.
Cool. Well, hopefully this is helpful. And yeah, hopefully this wasn't offensive to anybody. We want to be mindful and conscious and caring of everybody and where you're at. But if you liked it, if you know somebody who maybe has been struggling with an alter capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and might enjoy hearing this episode, share it with them, let them know. And yeah, y'all can find more at revealthegameoflife.com. We love to hear from you. Let us know if you're listening, what you're thinking about, what questions you're asking of your life in the universe right now. We want to know. And we'll catch you next week for another episode of Reveal the Game of Life.